So sometimes a thing happens in the world, like a big event happens, and there's kind of like a general consensus about that thing, like a general viewpoint, a general point of view towards that thing. And sometimes that point of view can be divided along political lines. Like sometimes left wing people feel a certain way about certain thing and right wing people feel a different way about it. And this is one of the reasons why I don't make videos about politics anymore, because when you're like ingrained into those political communities, you kind of have this audience that kind of has expectations, and sometimes you feel kind of afraid to have the wrong opinion because you could have huge audience backlash if you just have the wrong opinion about certain things. And that's just a stress that I don't want to deal with. Like an example of this is when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars. I actually talked about this on a stream on my main channel. But it seemed that the general consensus within the sort of left-wing sphere was that that was okay for Will Smith to do, if not good for him to do, which I fully disagree with. I think it's completely abhorrent and ridiculous to use physical violence against someone just because they told a mean joke about you or someone that you love. Totally indefensible in my opinion, but wide swaths of people, both online and offline, were kind of defending Will Smith's actions. And when things like that happen, it makes me feel like very like, what is going on? Like, it's like, am I the weirdo here? Makes you feel very like alienated from the rest of human society. And that's a very scary feeling to have. That's a very weird and dangerous feeling, and I don't like having it. Obviously, the more I talked about that stuff, the more I found people that understood and agreed with my point of view. But that's why the internet and social media is weird, because generally you get a bombardment of like the most extreme and the most controversial views, and that's kind of what gets pushed to the front. But it really felt like everybody in my audience and everybody that I knew and all my friends kind of shared this opinion that I just like strongly disagreed with. Anyway, getting to the point of this video, it's a similar thing with the murder of the United Healthcare CEO. So my initial reaction to this whole thing is like, obviously you don't murder people. Like, murder is bad. It is abhorrent. It is morally reprehensible. That is not a thing you do. It is not a useful way to solve problems. The concept of like vengeance in general is stupid, in my opinion. Like, it is highly counterproductive. I understand how it can be like emotionally gratifying, but it's immoral and unproductive. So that was kind of just my knee-jerk initial reaction. And similar to what I was talking about before, I pretty much cannot find anyone on the internet who seems to agree with that opinion, except like conservatives. Like, it seems to be among the people that I generally consider to have similar political values as myself, most of them seem to either find this whole thing funny or just think it's completely justified, or have these weird sort of vigilante fantasies that I think are very cringe. And again, you know, I immediately started to feel very isolated from, you know, my community. And in this particular case, I'm not talking about my specific audience. I'm just kind of talking about the people in my social media circles in general. And I know there's a lot of times people meme about stuff just as a way of coping and a way of processing crazy things that happen, and that's fine. And I think that some of this going on is this, but we have all this stuff where, you know, people, like, I just read that they had like a costume contest where people were dressing up as the killer, people talking about how the killer is hot, and it's like, that's a bad person. Like, that's not a thing that I want to be defending or encouraging. In these cases, and just in general, I always try to think of things from multiple perspectives. And I start to think like, well, what if this guy was like just genuinely evil? I don't know that much about this guy. I can't even remember his name. Brian Thompson. So I don't know anything about him, but I do have strong opinions on the healthcare system in America, and just healthcare as a for-profit enterprise in general. I think is kind of just surface level immoral. But I also tend not to think most people are just genuinely evil to the extent that murdering them is justifiable, but there have been people in human history that have been that evil. And perhaps this guy was one of them. I couldn't really tell you. I don't know that much about him. I kind of doubt it, though. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that there are a lot of greedy, selfish people that do things that exploit others and do things that cause suffering for other people. But there's some line at which you have to be so evil. Like if you think of the most evil people that have ever existed, you know, like the classic example, of course, is Hitler. If someone like ran up to Hitler and shot him in the back, you know, it's hard to imagine that I would be this conflicted about it. Or like, for example, something that happened during my lifetime was the killing of Osama bin Laden, which it wasn't, you know, that was like a military operation, but you know, they did run up on the guy and kill him. And I don't remember feeling any type of way of that. I was like, okay, that's a thing. I was just like, yeah, I guess it's probably good that that guy's dead. And just in general, I think it's just very creepy and weird to like celebrate the death of someone, even when it's not murder. Like I remember when Rush Limbaugh died, like a bunch of people were like cheering and happy. And, you know, Rush Limbaugh, I think is, you know, like one of the worst people, but it's just not, I feel like it doesn't sit well to me to celebrate the deaths of people. People have families. The deaths of people causes sadness and suffering for other people. The CEO of United Healthcare, he had a wife and kids, and I'm sure that they are devastated. Like I'm not the type of person that's going to celebrate the death of pretty much anyone. Like that just seems weird to me. I don't know. I just feel this whole situation feels very weird to me. And I don't see anyone like talking about it in a very nuanced way. And so I'm starting to feel that sort of alienation that I feel every now and then when something gets big on the internet and I just don't see anyone being serious about it. So yeah, I don't really have a conclusion to this video, but my feelings are complex and no one's talking about this as if it's complex. At least no one I see. Again, maybe I'm just in the wrong circles. And again, that's one of the reasons why I don't participate very closely with online communities, especially political communities, because you sort of get into these echo chambers and you don't get to hear the different sides of different arguments. And, you know, I don't mind people like using this as a catalyst for, you know, re-entering the conversation about healthcare and the problems with healthcare and the problems with the healthcare industry and how bad it is. That's totally fine. But I'm definitely uncomfortable with people like celebrating this random murderer like he's some kind of hero. It's like, no, I think anyone that can just walk up to another human being and just murder them in cold blood is a deranged person, is a dangerous person. Who's to say who is the next person that this murderer decides is evil and needs to be killed? Will we always agree with who they think is evil enough to be murdered? I don't know. It's just a bad precedent. It's not a thing people should do. And I don't like the way that people are talking about it. But again, there is a line. Perhaps he was just evil enough to where at least something like this could be, if not defended or justified, at least accepted. But you know, that I think that's a hard bar to pass. Like, I don't think you can just go around killing all the CEOs just because they exploit people. That's just not, I don't think that's a precedent that we can set. And like I said, really the problem is people are not talking about this in a complex and nuanced way. Because really what people are excited about is like, oh, we stuck it to him. We got revenge on this bad person. But like I said, revenge, it doesn't do anything. Revenge doesn't fix the problem. So I don't think people are worried about problem resolutions, conflict resolutions. No one seems to be focused on that. People just seem to be celebrating, ooh, we got one. But it's like, now what? But yeah, I don't know. I've had these thoughts and I don't know where else to put them. I was thinking earlier, is like, man, I need a blog so I can put these thoughts out. And then I was like, wait, I have multiple YouTube channels. I'll just vomit it out there and see if anyone has any interesting thoughts. I don't know. Maybe people just completely disagree. Maybe people think that it's good that this happened, but I don't know. I feel very, very weird and conflicted. And I just wanted to get that out somewhere. And that's what this is. Sorry, there's no real resolution to this video, but yeah, I don't know. This is kind of a strange situation from my perspective. Anyway, let me know what you think.